So this week we actually got a fight on the Friday instead of the usual Saturday. Riyadh Season is bringing yet again another massive boxing card with the Knockout Chaos event, headlined by Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou, co-main Zhilei Zhang, and Joseph Parker. I'm only going to break down the Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou prediction in this video, so let's go straight to the tail of the tape. Taking a look at the tail of the tape, Anthony Joshua is 34 to Francis Ngannou's 37. Joshua is 27-3 in his professional boxing career. Francis Ngannou is 0-1, but he's 17-3 in his MMA career. Joshua has 24 knockouts. Ngannou has 0 in his professional boxing career, but Ngannou has 12 knockouts in MMA and 4 submissions and 1 decision victory. Anthony Joshua has a height advantage of 2 inches, but Ngannou has a reach advantage of 1 inch. Both are orthodox fighters, but Ngannou can switch it. But I feel like I should break down both fighters, as I feel like the boxing community doesn't know much about Ngannou, and the MMA community doesn't actually know as much as they think about Anthony Joshua. Starting off with the challenger, Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou started his career late. After leaving his home country of Cameroon, he eventually found himself in France. He was homeless, but he managed to get himself into the MMA Factory gym. He left Cameroon with the dream of becoming a boxer, but after having success at the MMA Factory, went into MMA. He won his first fight, lost his second fight, but then went on a big win streak, getting himself into the UFC. He had a 100% stoppage rate on all of his victories, and eventually got himself to the title against the greatest UFC heavyweight champion, Stipe Miocic. He had a good first round, but he tired himself out, and Stipe took control of the fight, taking him down, holding him down, and winning the majority of the fight, getting the decision victory. He then had a fight with Derek Lewis, and it was being marketed as the hardest puncher in the UFC versus the man with the most knockouts in the UFC. Turned out to be an extremely boring fight, maybe one of the worst fights in UFC history, and Francis lost a decision. But he didn't stop, he kept getting more knockouts until he eventually got a rematch with Stipe Miocic. After putting more time into his wrestling and becoming a more patient fighter, he absolutely destroyed Stipe and won the heavyweight undisputed belt in the UFC. He only defended the belt one time, and that was against his former teammate, Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane was Francis Ngannou's last fight in the UFC, and it wasn't honestly his most impressive fight either. Ciryl, having worked with Ngannou before and being trained by Ngannou's former coach, won both the first and second round on the feet, slowly trying to dismantle Francis, until Francis pulled out his grappling and won the last 3 rounds. The 5th round was a little controversial, and there was some controversy of some people thinking Ciryl Gane actually beat Francis Ngannou, and I think that fight, and I'll speak mainly for myself, was probably one of the reasons the Ngannou-Fury fight didn't seem as close. Ngannou just left the UFC, and having his last fight, him losing on the feet against Ciryl Gane, and Ciryl's known for being elusive, fast, a good jab. It seemed like everything Fury could do, but Ciryl Gane had only been fighting for a few years, where Tyson Fury had been fighting for decades. But Ngannou came out, shocked me and almost everyone with his performance. Some people, and I'm going to call out Ariel Helwani on this, were saying Francis was probably going to win, but no one could tell you how Francis was going to win other than he had power and he had determination. There was no breakdowns on how people actually thought Ngannou was going to achieve a knockout. But Francis not only had an impressive showing against Tyson Fury, and didn't just knock Fury down, he won a handful of rounds, which I didn't think he was going to be able to do. Knock down Fury, maybe, probably, yes. It's not like Fury hasn't been knocked down before, but to actually win rounds against someone like Tyson Fury, that was the impressive thing. I don't think Tyson Fury had his best night against Francis Ngannou, but Francis not only improved since his last fight with Ciryl Gane, he walked out as the people's champ, and then the talk became how much of a threat he is to the rest of the heavyweight division. I thought we'd only see a Fury and Ngannou rematch, and then Ngannou would leave to go to the PFL and go back to fighting in MMA. But with Deontay Wilder's loss on the Day of Reckoning card, it let Ngannou have a perfect chance to jump in line and to fight former 2-time unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. Catching up the A side of the event, Anthony Joshua. I think people forget, Anthony Joshua only started fighting around the time that he turned 18. He didn't have an overly long amateur career either, but although it wasn't overly long, he made the most of it, going to the Olympics and winning the gold medal. He turned pro, and within about a year, 2 years, 3 years, he already fought for the world heavyweight title, won the world heavyweight title in just 2 rounds, and becoming the second fastest heavyweight champion in the modern era, winning the world heavyweight title in just his 16th fight. He would then go on to defend against Brazil, Molina, and then fighting an extremely motivated Klitschko, coming off a disappointed loss to Tyson Fury, not wanting to make the same mistakes of being gun-shy, as Anthony Joshua now had one of the belts that Tyson Fury took off Klitschko, and it was going to be gold or bust. So Klitschko put everything he had into one last fight and had a heavyweight classic. A veteran heavyweight champion with over 60 fights, fighting a new up-and-comer in just his 18th fight. Joshua started strong, Klitschko came back, knocking him down, and Klitschko being one of the hardest hitters in the heavyweight division, but Joshua climbed back off the canvas, took him a few rounds to recover, but then got a sensational knockout victory. Since then, he's defended against Moore, Povetkin, Pulev, but then lost the titles to an all-time great, and Alexander Usyk. And an interesting note is I don't think anyone other than Alexander Usyk and maybe Klitschko have won 4 rounds off someone like Joshua. Joshua's criticized a lot, but people aren't typically winning more than 2 to 3 rounds off of him. And Anthony Joshua remains to be the only person in Alexander Usyk's professional career to have won a scorecard off of him. But after the 2 losses to Alexander Usyk, Joshua changed trainers again to Derek James for 2 fights against Jermaine Franklin, and that win could age well depending on how Jermaine Franklin's career goes. And I think he gets too much hate off that performance. And the Helenius fight, it didn't look good while they were fighting. It was an amazing knockout. But I think people forget, Helenius was a late replacement on a few days' notice, and a completely different opponent to someone like Dillian White. Dillian is shorter than Joshua, goes in for a slugfest, and Helenius is taller and pretty much just tried running most of the fight. But with Joshua's last performance in December against Otto Wallin, he's looked far better. With Derek James, he kind of looked like he was following instructions, a step behind a lot, never feeling too confident in what he was doing, but he's looked phenomenal with Ben Davidson in that Otto Wallin fight, looking like he was fighting off more instinct rather than feeling like he had to truly think about every motion that he was going to make. But now we're here for the Knockout Chaos event this Friday. Looking at some of Ngannou's strengths, the first one, and we can't go without mentioning it, is clearly Ngannou's power. He's knocked out almost everyone he's fought, or submitted them. Again, the only person he couldn't knock out was Ciryl Gane and Tyson Fury. But like I mentioned earlier, talking about what Ngannou learned after his Miocic loss, he's far more patient. He doesn't just blow all of his energy trying to get a first round knockout. And so far, I feel like we could probably say he has a really good chin. He hasn't been cracked by that many hard punchers though. Ciryl Gane is someone who typically likes to break you down and wear you out to get a victory. Although Ciryl Gane did hit Ngannou with some big shots, Miocic hit him with some big shots. The 2 biggest punchers that Ngannou's probably ever faced was probably Rosenstrike and Derek Lewis, and Rosenstrike got knocked out in 20 seconds, and Derek Lewis, like I said, that fight is one of the worst UFC fights in UFC history, mainly because neither Ngannou or Lewis really wanted to engage with each other. Tyson Fury is really not that big of a puncher in my opinion. It's not that he doesn't have any power, but he's knocked out Deontay Wilder, who had been hurt multiple times before Tyson Fury even knocked him out. Dillian White, who had been knocked out by both Joshua and Povetkin, dropped by Oscar Rivas, and dropped by Joseph Parker, all by the same punch, being an uppercut, other than Joseph Parker's. So Dillian White is resilient, but the uppercut seems to really be his Achilles heel, and Tyson Fury took advantage. Tyson Fury is a smart fighter, but I just don't think he's a one-punch knockout artist. Tyson Fury, similar to Ciryl Gane, likes to break you down over multiple rounds. He likes to wear on you and take his time getting to a knockout. But that's not really what it felt like he was going to try and do with Francis. He ran out, trying to land big haymakers and big shots on Francis, and Francis was able to take them, even taking an elbow by Tyson Fury. So Francis has been shown to be resilient, and I don't think Francis has that much fear in him. One of the other things that I think is Francis's biggest strength is his determination. Francis at no time is just gonna quit or feel sorry for himself if he's losing a fight. He will keep trying to find any way to win. Francis was probably the scariest puncher in all of the UFC when he fought Ciryl Gane, and Ciryl Gane was beating him on the feet, and it didn't matter, but Ngannou never gave up, and he found one of the biggest flaws in Ciryl's game, which was the grappling, and Ngannou took that opportunity with both hands. And even with someone like Tyson Fury, a fight no one thought that Ngannou was going to have a chance with, there's even talk Ngannou was only taking the fight for money. That was clearly not the case by the end of the night. Ngannou was coming for a victory, and it doesn't matter if you don't believe he is, or if he's losing a fight. He is not out of a fight until the final bell rings. One thing that surprised Fury, and might surprise Anthony Joshua, is Francis is able to switch hit, and be effective in switch hitting. He tends to throw more looping punches when he's in orthodox. His big left hook, his big overhand right, and he seems to throw straight lefts when he's in his orthodox stance, and even leaving his lead hand out. Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, his 2023 looked amazing. After 2 straight losses to Alexander Usyk, he came back with a 3-win streak, looking better each time he fought. And now, linking up with Ben Davidson, I'll repeat what I said before, he looks like he's naturally fighting on instinct, rather than just following and thinking about every move he's doing. He also seems far more confident in his own ability, and some of that confidence seemingly came after knocking out Helenius, and he's probably going to have even more confidence after knocking out Otto Wallin. And the thing that no one can take away from Anthony Joshua is his focus. He's not someone who takes long vacations or need to show off a ton of his money. He's solely focused on becoming 3-time heavyweight world champion. And some people will call him predictable because his style is kind of focused on just being... He doesn't have a super personal style that no one's seen before. He's just really good at all the basics in boxing. But I think when people get in the ring with him, they almost underestimate how good he truly is. But saying he's just good at the basics is almost a disservice to his actual talent. He also can look pretty different from fight to fight. If you compare how Anthony Joshua fought in his last 3 fights, he doesn't actually look that similar. He was being long and rangy, trying to stay away from Franklin, very flat-footed, but then he was very forward motion, big rangy shots coming forward when he fought Helenius, and then he was a mix of both when he fought Otto Wallin, keeping his range, but throwing big heavy shots either when Otto Wallin was coming in, or when Joshua saw his opportunity at range. So he's not unpredictable in the sense that he has an extremely odd style, but he can be unpredictable in how he approaches a fight, because no one really thought that Joshua was going to try and outbox Usyk in that first fight. And that's more what I mean. It's not that Joshua has, again, some really weird, wacky style. It's just, we just don't know where he is mentally a lot of the time when he's going into a fight, or how he sees the other fighter. But looking at the keys to victory, I think Francis Ngannou should probably focus on counter shots. Push the pressure, yes. You want Joshua to engage, but you want Joshua to probably throw some big shots that you can counter. Again, Francis is patient, and he'll need that patience with this fight, but he can't let Joshua get too comfortable either. Defense is another one. Again, he's taken some big shots from Fury, and he looked good. He took some big shots from Ciryl Gane. He looked good. Anthony Joshua doesn't just break down people. He can also just hit them with a one-shot knockout. So Francis needs to make sure his defense is solid, that he's someone that's hard to hit. Because Joshua's accuracy on people who stand still or stay on the center line, he is extremely accurate. He will get through the guard. So Ngannou's got to not just be focused on where his hands are, but where he is as well in that ring. If I was in Ngannou's training camp, one of the things that I think he needs to focus on the most after that Tyson Fury fight is his reaction to feints. Because for the first half of the fight, he was biting on so many feints that Fury was making, or even just small little movements. Fury didn't capitalize on most of them, and after getting knocked down, he stopped throwing as many feints. But Joshua in his last fight threw a ton of feints, and that helped him get the knockout that he was looking for. And for the last thing, I think Ngannou needs to enforce his size when he's in that ring. And that can come from grappling exchanges or just being on the ropes. Try to outmuscle someone like Anthony Joshua, because Francis has actually had to deal with it against Stipe Miocic, Ciryl Gane, Tyson Fury. Those were all big, strong guys, where Joshua hasn't had to typically fight people who are as strong as him. So recapping, Ngannou needs to be patient, but not too patient, Don't just throw shots for the sake of throwing shots against someone like Joshua, because he will respond with speed and accuracy. Enforce your size. Try and bully Joshua if you're in there. And now moving on to Anthony Joshua, AJ should probably focus again on his feints. Because like I said with Ngannou's side, Ngannou was biting a lot on little things that Fury was doing. Little things that I didn't think he would bite on, he was biting on. And rewatching the Otto Wallin fight, I didn't actually remember how active Joshua was on his feint game. Joshua's also got to be patient. Joshua can't just run in there and think he's going to bulldoze over Ngannou. He's just some MMA fighter. Or even if he hurts Ngannou, or thinks he hurts Ngannou, I wouldn't just run in trying to get a finish. Joshua also seems to have a speed advantage, so countering Ngannou, especially when he's unorthodox throwing looping punches, if Joshua can throw a lot of straight punches and throw them with speed and then try to grapple, that seems to probably be the smartest option. Fighting at range and then throwing quick counters. That's how I see Joshua getting a victory in this fight. Now, some of the flaws that Ngannou should look for in Joshua's game is he is a bit more flat-footed, and depending on Joshua's game plan, he might leave his hands down a bit. He's still quick, and he still has good defense. And although I think Joshua probably has a better chin than Fury, and I know that's an unpopular take, the thing against Joshua is that he takes a longer time to recover from big shots. He was getting hurt by Klitschko after knocking him down in the 5th, he got knocked down by Klitschko in the 6th, and although he got up and he looked fine, it did take him longer to recover, and then for him to go back and dominate the rest of the fight. And in the Ruiz fight, where 4 out of his 5 knockdowns in his career came from, he must have got concussed in that 3rd round, he got knocked down twice, but I think people forget he was starting to win the rest of the fight again, before I think his confidence came back and he wanted to fight similar to how he fought in the 3rd, and he got caught again in the 7th, and kind of felt like he ran out of answers. We've also seen Joshua get hurt by someone like White, but if you can't capitalize on it, Joshua will actually recover pretty quick. Povetkin kind of hurt him in the 1st round, but then never really had the same success. And people think at the end of the Usyk fight, Usyk was on the verge of knocking Joshua out. I think a lot of that comes from hype and excitement, because Joshua moved out of the way out of a lot of those punches, and although he looked exhausted and tired, and was probably not going to make it through another round, I don't think the punch power of Usyk was going to get him out of there. I think it was just his pure exhaustion at the end of that fight. And that's not trying to discredit Usyk, that's crediting Usyk on his speed and output over his just raw power. But Usyk's output is probably better than anyone at the heavyweight division except Joe Joyce. Difference is Usyk is way faster, so he just mentally drains you and physically drains you at the same time. So to recap, Joshua can be hurt. I think he's a bit tougher than people give him credit for, but you can't slow down if you think you hurt him. Joshua's also been a bit more flat-footed, moving forward a lot, and coming down in straight lines when he's been throwing punches. He still will move to the side a bit, but it kind of looks like his confidence could almost be a weakness. And now with Ngannou doesn't actually have that large of an output, but it does seem that almost anyone who fights him, their output dips down by like 50%. So it helps allow Ngannou force his will. Ngannou does look strong when he's coming forward, so I think if he starts moving back, he might struggle a bit more, especially if you start catching him off guard moving backwards. And one thing that I thought he was only doing for Tyson Fury was he was leaving his backhand almost like he was ready for parries. And I mainly thought that was not just for parrying Fury's jab, but for when Fury does his new kind of favorite combination, a looping jab hook, and then a big overhand right. But I noticed that Ngannou was also doing it in MMA against other strikers, such as Ciryl Gane. And I think that's something that Joshua could use to his advantage. Ngannou is a good gas tank, but not a great gas tank. He has seen to get tired and slow down in fights. He did look far better in the Fury fight, but I wonder if it's some body shots that can get to him. Or maybe it's just him overworking himself and getting tired, but he has been seen to slow down in fights. Like I said before, typically when Ngannou's fighting in orthodox, he seems to throw this wild left hand. He didn't throw the overhand right that much when he fought Fury. And when he's in southpaw, he'll tend to leave his lead hand out, but he throws more straight punches. I do think this is kind of an interesting fight because it is kind of unpredictable. We don't know how much better Ngannou's going to look or how many things that he'll change from the Fury fight to the Joshua fight. And for Anthony Joshua, I'd be curious to know what his approach is in this fight. If it's going to be boxing on the back foot, boxing on the front foot, or a mixture of both. If he's going to be the aggressor, if he's going to be the counterpuncher. I'm not actually completely sure, but I think that's what makes this fight way more interesting. And I think neither guy has really fought someone like this before. But again, with the 2 power punches Ngannou's faced, Rosenstrike lasted 20 seconds, and Derek Lewis never really engaged. I think it'll be really interesting to see how someone like Francis Ngannou at 37 deals with someone with the power of Joshua and the output of Joshua. And for Joshua, I'm going to be really interested to see how he deals with someone who can throw combinations, who truly has no quit in them, and who's probably stronger than him and could bully him inside that ring. The last thing that I think is important to mention is, where do both fighters go if they win or lose? If Ngannou wins this fight at all, I think everyone will be impressed, and Turki Al-Sheikh has already said the winner of this fight will get to fight for the Undisputed belt. But I think even a win over Anthony Joshua, that would put Ngannou as probably one of the best combat sports athletes of all time. And a loss to Anthony Joshua, even if you're an MMA fan, you see this fight as 50-50, a loss to Anthony Joshua is a loss to one of the greatest heavyweights of this generation. So I don't think it's that detrimental. And I imagine he'd probably just go straight to the PFL, fight in MMA. Or if he wants to stay in boxing, he could probably fight someone like a Zilly Zhang or a Joseph Parker, which there'd still be a ton of money in. If he fought Deontay Wilder, I'd probably even favor Francis to win that fight. But for Anthony Joshua, I think the pressure's on him. He can't really have a close fight. If he dominates this fight and puts on a show, I think that's what's expected of him. I might have the unpopular opinion that if he loses, I don't actually think it ruins his 3rd title opportunity. I think it just really diminishes his career, and especially to the public's opinion of him. Because I feel like if Tyson Fury were to win and Anthony Joshua were to lose, I think just because everyone knows that fight should happen no matter what, and I still think Joshua's a really bad style matchup for someone like Fury, I think Fury would probably allow that fight to still go through before both of them retire. But if Usyk were to beat Fury, which I'm kind of leaning towards will probably happen, I don't think Joshua will ever get that trilogy fight with Usyk. If Joshua can knock down or even knock out Francis Ngannou, that would be huge, because no one in MMA has even been able to knock down, really hurt, or let alone knock out Francis Ngannou. That would not just be a statement to someone like Tyson Fury and the boxing community, that would just be a statement in combat sports as a whole. So all that to say, Francis, if he wins, that's probably one of the biggest wins in boxing history. And if Joshua is to win by knockout, that is a statement across combat sports. But my prediction for this fight, being a Joshua fan, I'm extremely nervous for Joshua, because even if I don't think Ngannou's as skilled, Ngannou does have crazy knockout power. And I've been a hardcore Joshua defender since the Ruiz days, even when everyone is hating on him. I've been saying for years I think Joshua can beat Tyson Fury, I think he can beat Deontay Wilder, and I'm going to say it, I think Anthony Joshua is going to beat Francis Ngannou, and I'm going to take him by a unanimous decision. I keep seeing the scorecard in my head, 97-93, so that's my prediction. Maybe he'll get a knockout, but I'm going to take him by unanimous decision. But I don't think anyone should take Ngannou lightly. He is still a huge threat, not just for his knockout power, but for his patience, resilience, and grit. But make sure if you guys don't want to miss this fight, it's on Friday, not the Saturday. UFC 299 takes place on this Saturday. But let me know who you guys think is going to win and how they're going to win. Put it down in the comments. Let's have a discussion, and I'll see you in the next one.